Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Best on Wellbeing podcast. My name is Guillaume Tremblay, and today we're going to continue this discussion about the idea of the blah blah blah, the chattery mind, and we'll go briefly on a couple things, and maybe look at one more trick in terms of how to create that space, that moment of stillness in the blah blah blah. So, a few things here that are important to consider. When we talk about this tendency to overthink, to ruminate, to talk to ourselves about ourselves all day long, something, the fancy word for it is self referential internal narrative, what we talk to ourselves about ourselves all day long. This tendency, like we said last episode, is the default mode network uh, that is a part of the brain in the mid center of the brain that lights up when this activity, this internal experience is occurring. Now, part of what makes us sort of captivated so much by this mental experience that we all have is perhaps a bit of a deep down belief that it's useful to us, that if we think about a lot of the challenges in our day to day life, then we're protecting ourselves from making bad decisions. That this sort of blah, 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 this kind of running around and constantly thinking is going to serve us functionally and help us to get on with life. And so we might believe, for example, that there's a trade off between quieting the mind or having moments of space, those 20 seconds, 30 seconds we talked about last episode, that will sort of reduce a little bit of the ability of the brain to get things done. That it's kind of like the peace that we want to have inside to have a little bit less like ongoing rumination is good, but at the same time, I got to think about stuff because I'm a busy person. I need to get it done. So I get it. It's cool. I want to quiet my mind, but I also need to get things done. So I got a lot on my mind. So I'm going to think about it. And therefore, kind of leave me alone with this quiet your mind stuff. So we have a bit of a belief that it's useful, it's practical to kind of think a lot, and it protects us. It gets us to do things and not forget things and so on. But what we know with cognitive neuroscience is that the blah blah blah, that kind of like sort of circular kind of thinking of is actually very distinct network of the brain compared to other parts of the brain. So for example, decision making seems to happen kind of more in the occipital area of the brain. Executive tasks or executive functioning, be able to kind of handle a complex situation and navigate through that and decide what tasks to undertake in order to navigate a complex situation. Executive functioning, it's more sort of the parietal area or a part of the brain we call the task positive network, which we'll get into eventually. Emotional regulation, to be able to regulate emotions, that part of the brain has nothing to do with the default mode network. Information processing also has nothing to do with the default mode network. And so the parts of the brain that we really like to function well, doing focused tasks, decision making, information processing, emotional regulation, all those good things that help us get on with life in a practical, smooth way are not the default mode network. The part of the brain, like I've mentioned many times, is kind of associated with this constant sort of internal narrative, blah, 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 blah. So, and the other thing that some research has shown us, and there's some peer-reviewed papers on this, is that the default mode network actually competes for kind of what you could say neural bandwidth. It competes for energy between the other parts of the brain. And so when the blah, blah, blah is going on constantly, it actually pulls away sort of neural bandwidth or neural energy, if you will, from other parts of the brain that we want to be able to function maximally well. And I mean, I've seen this in a clinical perspective. Many people who are riddled with high levels of anxiety have a lot more trouble making decisions because that part of their brain is almost shut off. And the hyperactivity of the default mode network is kind of consuming them. Now, we'll get into that again at next episode about the default mode network and not trying to demonize that part of the brain. I mean, some activity is quite normal and functional and good. I'm talking about sort of the excessive blah, blah, blah that can become problematic. But when we take moments to create stillness, pauses in our ongoing thinking, when we learn to not think for a few moments at a time, we're liberating neural bandwidth, neural energy, if you will, to go to other parts of the brain that we want to see function really, really well. So emotional regulation, to process information, to make decisions, to focus on tasks, those things have and more ease now. They can work even more functionally when there's a little bit less thinking. So a quiet mind, less thinking, is actually quite practical. There is no trade-off in this case in terms of having less thinking. You can actually respond to life in a highly functional way, um, and with less stress and with more well-being. So fundamentally, increasing well-being doesn't reduce your ability to get things done well. In fact, it probably enhances it. So the thing I'm going to talk about really quick before we head off today is another little trick. We talked about breathing stillness last episode. This one is very simple. Whenever you're walking, anytime you're walking, if you just coordinate your breathing and your steps, breathe in 2, 3 steps, exhale 2, 3, 4 steps. Ideally, you exhale more steps than you inhale. Some people like 2-to-3 ratio. I recommend 3-to-4 ratio. So 3 steps on the inhalation, 4 steps on the exhalation. But basically doing that whenever you're walking is an opportunity to just not think. Breathe in 2, 3 steps. Exhale 2, 3, 4 steps. Inhale 2, 3. And it just creates a pause. So if you're going to an important work meeting, obviously you need proper preparation, read the agenda, prepare yourself. I'm not talking about not doing those things. We got to do our homework. But once the homework's done, we don't need to keep thinking. In fact, you'll probably respond better to a situation if you can come in and just give your brain a little bit of a pause from the blah, 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 open up the neural bandwidth to go elsewhere into your brain and see how the brain responds. It'll probably be actually a little more heightened and with a little bit more ease. So that's it, folks, for today. Give it a try whenever you're walking. It's an opportunity to not think. And remember, a quiet brain is a practical brain. Have a good day, folks.